It's the first day of OctOSR, a month-long celebration of old-school style gaming, where various podcasts are going to be sharing, and podcasters are going to be sharing their ideas on what makes up old-school gaming, their favorite adventures, their favorite stories, and just trying to relate how an old-school style of play is not only still relevant today, but extremely fun and has a lot to offer. For myself, today I want to talk about one of the tenets of OSR. If you listen to OSR podcast long enough, ruling's not rules. It's probably the one I hear the most often. It's really the one people talk about the most often. And what does it actually mean? Because it's taken a lot of different forms. Well, maybe not a lot of different forms. It's taken different forms. And there's a movement that's based on the OSR, a sort of a rules-light movement that you see, where it's fewer rules leading to a more streamlined style of play, maybe a faster style of play. Is that what ruling's not rules means? Less rules? Not necessarily. If you look at some of the modern rules-light incarnations, like Maze Rats, which clocks in about a dozen pages, Cairn, which clocks in at a little over 20, even Grok, a game I talked about, which takes its inspiration from the OSR and FKR, which is Free Kriegspiel rules, which is a very free-form, rules-light way of gaming. It clocks in at just over 30 pages, including the inside covers. But if you go back and look at the older school rule sets, OD&D, the granddaddy of them all, the Three Little Brown Books, all clocked in over 30 pages. The Moldvay basic rule set clocked in at 68 pages, including covers. I'm doing this count off PDFs. And the Mincer just the player's guide part of the basic rule clocked in at the same 68 pages. So ruling's not rules, not necessarily not a lot of rules, but I think it's more an approach of how you approach your game world. It's about the campaign being unique to each playing group. It's about the GM designing a world or rolling up a world or a combination of the two, because we all know how a lot of OSR folks love their random charts. The players roll up characters, decide on a little bit of basis of their background and personality, and then they begin exploring the world. The players question the GM about the world. The GM describes what's around them. The GM drops different plot hooks or different personalities into the world, and the players decide what they're going to pursue. And through this back and forth, this discussion, they'll come upon eventually a point where you don't know whether the player characters are going to succeed or fail at something they're attempting. And that's when you roll the dice, and that's when you have to come to the rules. Some rules may be set early. Usually a lot of times, I think in most any system, the combat rules are fairly set, even if there is some flexibility built in. And the DM or GM reacts to what the players do through the world, through the NPCs, the creatures, the monsters, and maybe even the world in general. Perhaps the PCs make some sort of a decision or accomplish something that changes the face of the game world. And in that way, you're building a world together. So every table, every world, even if you have a common basis with other groups, is going to be unique. And I think that this is the essence of ruling's not rules. It's that, yes, you have some set basic rules you start with, but they're fairly generic, and you're going to build the specifics as you go. You're going to go with what fits the situation, what fits your group, what fits the way the plot, for lack of a better word, develops, because plot would sometimes indicates, it's preset, but just how the actions interact and build a story from beginning to a denouement of some point, whether that's a total party kill, or the party's triumphing and taking control of a kingdom and being kings of the realm, or moving on to another level of play into another world or another dimension, or exploring the planes. But the rulings, not rules, it's a collaborative story. It's an emphasis on play at the table. And it combines play on the table, on the character sheets, on maps if you're using maps and minis, or virtually if you're using a virtual map. Combines the play of on the table and above the table, with the players inquiring and the GM explaining, and they draw from each other. The players draw inspiration on what's available to work with from what the GM says. The GM draws inspiration from the direction the players seem to be going. And there's a push and a pull. And there's a building of steps. And ultimately, that's the style of play that I think predominates the OSR. This idea that you're not stuck with, hey, this is a rule book, and this is how we do it. And every answer you're looking for is going to be on your character sheet. Because it's not. Sometimes players take things in a direction that can't be anticipated by the rules, by the character sheet. And I don't think a lot of people realize what a sort of revolution in play this is until they've experienced it or done it, or at least seen it done. If you watch some sort of actual play or something where people are doing this. I think it's why a lot of people look at actual plays with suspicion, because they think, oh, well, this is all pre-plotted. I know that's something that's been hurled at some of the more popular live plays, is that, well, it's all mapped out, and these are just people acting. And it can probably seem that way if you have a group that works well together. And maybe some of it is. I don't know. Some of the more famous actual plays I haven't actually watched, so I couldn't tell you. But that's getting off subject. The point is, what was the point? The point is that rulings, not rules, that rulings, not rules, is something that people are not going to be used to. Bringing new people into the hobby, where if they're used to playing a video game or board games, the rules are set. And everything you're looking for is in the rules. And if you run into a weird situation playing the game, you're going to look at the rules. Or, playing a video game, the rules are just going to be imposed upon you. Unless you have the skills to mod the game to your fitting. But even then, whatever rules you set, those are the rules you're going to play by. But with this rulings, not rules mindset, you can establish the rules as you go. You can be consistent within your own play group, within your own world. But you have just extreme flexibility for everyone involved, for players, for game masters, and it leads to a play where people are more invested because you've had an impact on the world, and your characters have had an impact on the world. And so you're invested in them that way, rather than, as some gaming styles do, you invest early, where there's a lot of effort put into building your character, whether it's, some sort of a point system, or it's through developing various types of backgrounds, whether it's choosing them or rolling on some kind of chart or something, where there's a lot of investment in sort of pre-game into the character. The investment in a rulings, not rules game is more often in what you've accomplished, both as player and as character. And they're hand in hand, and they overlap. And it's a style play that a lot of people play, and they find it far more satisfying than just following a set of rules, following a bunch of steps, and constantly rolling dice for things. So rulings, not rules, a very solid foundation for the OSR, and I think something worth talking about here on the first day of OctOSR. And I can't wait to see what the Clerics Wear Ringmail podcast and the Down in the Heat podcast, who I know have put out episodes in the last few days about what they're going to be doing for OctOSR or OSR October, depending on who wants to call it what hashtag they want to use. And there will be others, I'm sure, that will chime in as well. And some may choose to listen and respond and participate that way. But I think it'll be great to just talk about the very positive things that old school styles of play have to offer, role playing in general, gaming in general, and people in general. So I'm looking forward to hearing from others. I'm not going to be putting out a daily podcast or anything, but I'm going to try to certainly podcast more often than I have been. And I can't wait to see and hear what others do throughout this month. So until next time, have a great OctOSR.